Welcome back to Runeverse. I'm Andrew, and in this video I'm going to play through Keyforge. So this game has been in the news recently because it had been out of print or no longer making new sets for a while. It was on hiatus. Fantasy Flight, who had it, said that they wanted to bring it back and they were working on it. And then we got the announcement that it was sold to another company, which was actually owned by the creator of Fantasy Flight games originally, the person who was in charge when they started Keyforge in the first place, and that is the new company Ghost Galaxy Games, who will be making Keyforge again, taking it off hiatus, starting with the next set, which had already been developed by Fantasy Flight Games. They're kicking off with a print version of previously print and play only solo and co-op sets, and then they'll also be crowdfunding the next expansion on GameFound starting September 22nd, 2022. So it's been a lot of people talking about it, but I have a lot of extra decks that I haven't opened yet, and I thought it'd be fun for this is the perfect reason that I've been saving it for. So enough with the news, and let's roll up 2 decks for today's matchup. So 1 through 8 with a D8, we get 2, so it'll be this deck here, and just for variety's sake, I don't want to match it up against the other deck from the same set. So let's roll a D6, and that'd be deck number 1 here. So we're going to have Age of Ascension against Worlds Collide. So I don't have any unopened base set decks, and we'll have to save the later expansions, Mass Mutation and Dark Tidings, for later. But let's go ahead and see what is in these decks. All right, here we go. Let's see. We got a nice green Archon here. Mutant Sentei of the Egg with Untamed, Dis, and Mars. And here's the deck list. I don't see any crazy exciting stuff. We have a few rares. I don't necessarily know all the cards by names. I haven't played that much. Mars is all commons. Dis and Untamed are a little bit more spicy. Let's see the second deck. Probably not going to read through the whole deck. Of course, you can pause that and scan it and check it out online if you want to see all the cards. First, I'll just see them come up as we go. Okay, and this Worlds Collide deck, we have a purple design here, the Chancellor of Linzance with Brobnar Logos and Saurian. So we got a good mix, no repeated houses. That should be fun. And we got a couple specials with the Mega Mog Hunter and Mog Hunter's Brew. I think that just means they're linked. An Infomancer with a Lightning Bolt. I'm not sure oh, that means it's an anomaly. I think that means it is from the future. Of course, the future of Worlds Collide, I think that would be Mass Mutation, so that does make it a bit of a rare circumstance. So let's just get these sleeved up and see how they face off. So if you're not familiar with Keyforge, every deck is a unique entity. When you open a deck, that is unique to you. There are no other decks with the same list, and the decks can't be changed. So find the one you like or figure out how to use the one you have. And that's a pretty fun way to go, in my opinion. You might be familiar with this concept if you've been watching my channel and you saw some Soulforge Fusion. They use the unique deck game, although without the trademark, with a different direction, using a hybrid deck game, meaning you get to combine 2 into 1. But in Keyforge, you just open a deck and use it. And in Soulforge, each deck is comprising 2 houses. But here, each deck has 3 houses, or rather, Soulforge, they call them factions, but here you've got 3 houses. You just don't get to choose which ones go in your deck. So also the goal in Keyforge is a little bit different. Rather than trying to reduce some abstract health of your opponent down to 0 by attacking, you're instead trying to forge keys. So each player has 3 of these keys. If you are able to forge it, you'll flip it over to this side. The way you forge it by default is by having 6 amber at the start of your turn. So this is amber. A lot of cards will give you amber. You can also use creatures to reap to gain amber, and when you start your turn with 6 amber, you will forge one of your 3 keys. Forge your third key, and you immediately win the game. There are also no resources in Keyforge. Instead, the way you play is by choosing one of your houses at the start of your turn, and then for the duration of the turn, you can both use and play and discard cards of that house. So for example here, our starting hand, we have 2 cards from the Dis faction, the Dis house. You can see their symbol in the corner. We have, incidentally, 2 cards from Mars and 2 cards from Untamed. So we can choose any of those 3 houses, and then we'll be able to play both of the cards of that house. hypothetically speaking, let's say we started with Untamed. Let's say this turn we did Untamed. We played the creature. We played this action. On the start of our next turn, we would have an Untamed card. We also would refill our hand up to 6 every turn. But if we chose Dis that turn, we would not be able to use this creature because it is not a Dis creature. We can only use a creature if it is of the active house. However, the first player actually only gets to play 1 card rather than as many as you want. You can also do a mulligan, which I'm actually going to use. So the first player taking a mulligan is not a big downside because you do go down 1 card, but you refill your hand every turn. So it's not a big deal because on turn 2, you'll already be back up to 6 cards. And since you can only play 1 card, you're not even losing too much potential. You're down 1 option, but you're not down in like the number of cards you get to play necessarily. So let's see what these 5 cards have to offer. And I think we will go ahead and choose Mars. We're going to play Xanthic. The Xanthic's Harvester has 3 power. So power is how much damage it deals in a fight and how much health it has, or how much damage it can sustain. Damage is permanent. It will be marked with damage tokens. It has no armor. It can't be used while it has a non-Mars neighbor, which is interesting. That is a little bit harder to pull off. And if it reaps, it will give us 1 amber. We'll go ahead and put that out. Creatures come into play exhausted. And then we'll end our turn, refill our hand of 4 up to 6. So we draw 2 more and ready all our cards. Now it is the Chancellor of Linzance's first turn, and they get to play a normal first turn, naming a house and playing and doing as much as they want. So I'm going to play, we're going to choose Saurian. So this was a house that I think actually got added with this set, if I'm not mistaken. Well, we're going to play the Golden Spiral. So this is a location artifact. So artifacts will actually go down here. They're not used as creatures, but in most other ways, they kind of function like them in that they come into play exhausted. You've got to have that house as your active house in order to use them, and then they exhaust and use their actions if applicable. So we're not going to be able to use this turn, so we'll put this exhausted. We can also play another Saurian card because Saurian is our house. We can play as many Saurian cards as we want, although this is the last one. It says play capture 1 amber. So if our opponent had any amber, we would take 1 and put it onto this creature, who would then hold it hostage until the creature died, and then our opponent would get their amber back. In this case, they don't have any for us to capture, so we're just going to play it. And it has an ability that applies while it has amber on it, but that won't be in effect. It does have 5 power though, so we'll go ahead and do that. We will draw back up to 6 and ready all our cards. So this is a little bit hard because the Harvester can't be used while it has a non-Mars neighbor. So if I put this Untamed creature here on a future turn when we did do Mars again, we wouldn't be able to use the Harvester because it's a neighbor to an Untamed creature. So that is questionable. I usually like to do the play that lets me use the most cards out of my hand, but right now I might be a little bit greedy with my Xanthic's Harvester. So I think I'll just try it out. So it says to reap, gain 1 amber. So reap is an action that all creatures have access to. Kind of like in most games, you can attack with a creature, right? That's just kind of a default thing that creatures do. Well, in Keyforge, it's important to remember that they also can reap. So the Harvester could attack the Patrician. They would both deal damage equal to their power to each other. The Harvester would take 5 damage. The Patrician would take 3 damage, which would be marked with a token, so it would have 2 health remaining. It would still deal 5 damage, but it would need 2 more damage to be destroyed. So that would not be good. We don't want to attack with our Harvester. It would just die. What we will do is reap, and the effect of reaping is gain 1 amber. But because of the Harvester's ability, reap, gain 1 amber, we actually gain a 2nd amber. And then I'm going to play, because we chose Mars, we can do as much Mars stuff as we want. I'm going to play this action Mars first. The first thing to look at is that it has this amber symbol here. That means as soon as you play it, before anything else, you get 1 amber. And then it says, when you play it, this card, ready and use a friendly Mars creature. So we will ready and use it. We'll use it to reap, which means again, we'll get 2 amber. And now we have 5. So we're not getting to use much out of our hand because this is our only Mars card. We got to use a Mars card and play a Mars card. We don't have any more Mars cards. So we're gonna have to end our turn there and hope that 5 amber was a good enough reason for that. On the other side of the table, I think we are gonna go for a play that lets us use the most cards or play the most cards. So we're not gonna be using our Saurian. We're gonna choose House Logos. We'll play Hapsis. It's a creature 5 power. If it destroys an enemy creature, it gets warded and we get to draw a card, so maybe that'll come into play later. And when you play creatures in Keyforge, you are forming a battle line. So I'll do an example here with this next card, the Reassembling Automaton, which says if it's destroyed and we have any other creatures, it comes back to life. And we can play that here, in which case it will be on our rightmost flank. We can play it here, in which case it will be on our leftmost flank, or we can play it here. Just kidding, can't do that. You're not allowed to interrupt your battle line. So we can either play it to the left or right, and I don't know what is better. Sometimes there are different card effects or cards in the environment that might make you care about that. I don't care too much right now. We'll also play a Wormhole Technician, which has an ability when it reaps. We'd get to reveal the top of our deck, and if it is Logos, play it. And otherwise archive it, which is nice, and we'll just throw that out anywhere. I do have one more Logos card, which is that anomaly that we saw on the deck list. Kind of a cool card effect there. Cool frame border design. But it says when we play, we can graft an action card from our hand onto this creature. And when it reaps, we can basically get to play that card, play a copy of it, which is a really cool effect, and we don't have any actions. We do have 6 actions in our deck, so I kind of want to be greedy and not play the Infomancer because I'd like to use it. If I just play it, it is a 3-power creature, and it is elusive, which is nice. I wonder if it's powerful enough. I also have this Golden Spiral, which is a nice combo, a nice ability to use it more times than we should normally be allowed to. If only we had an action. I'm going to be greedy and hold on to it. That means we're not going to have another creature, and we're only going to get to draw 3 new cards with which to play our next turn. And there is an action in there, so we'll go ahead and end our turn. Again, we can't use our Saurian cards because we didn't choose House Saurian. So back to the Mutant Sentei of the Egg. I think we're going to have to leave our Harvester behind now, and we move on to Untamed. So we're going to play the Dusk Witch. Actually, she has Omega, so we have to save her. Omega means she has to be our last card. That's fine, it won't really affect our turn. She is elusive, so if she's attacked the first time, the attack is basically canceled, or it just doesn't do any damage, and then my creatures enter play ready is the main upshot of that. So we'll play her. We'll play her last, but just because I've already shown it. So we'll also play Regrowth. So again, first thing is we will get 1 amber, and then it says we can return a creature from our discard pile to our hand. We don't have one, so we're just playing that for the amber. And then another action, they're everywhere. Get another amber. And this one says deal 2 damage to an enemy flank creature and 1 to each enemy creature not on a flank. So let's not worry about the automaton because it can just come back. So we'll put 2 damage on the Wormhole Technician and then 1 on each of these. And that is all of our Untamed action. We'll play Dusk Witch last. And we now have 7 amber, which means we're going to declare check. So we tell our opponent check, and that is just an indicator verbally that, hey, look, I have enough amber to forge a key. So if the opponent doesn't do anything before our next turn starts, we will spend 6 of that amber to forge one of our 3 keys. There's no built-in way, like built into the game method of interacting with your opponent's amber, but there are many card effects that interact with it. For example, this capture 1 ability, there are ways you can steal it or make your opponent lose amber based on card abilities. But the amber can't be like attacked directly or anything like that. Ready that. So back on the Chancellor's turn, we've got 3 Logos creatures and 4 Logos cards in hand. So it seems like Logos is a super good way to go this turn. So I think first thing we will attack with Hapsis. It says that after an enemy creature is destroyed fighting Hapsis, it gets warded and we draw cards. So we'll have it fight the Harvester. So it'll take 3 damage and kill the Harvester, and that will trigger its ability. So it will get a ward, and that means the next time, I might have to look it up, but the next time something bad happens to it, basically that is going to be prevented. And draw a card. If it's Logos, we'll get to play it, but it's not. So drawing a card in Keyforge is not as good as in some games, although it can still be very good. Question is, do we want to reap or do we want to kill that Dusk Witch? Having all their creatures enter play ready is extremely powerful. So I guess we will kill it. So we'll attack it once. Its elusive ability means that first attack is canceled. So this had to be exhausted to attack, but no damage is dealt. And then we'll have the Reassembling Automaton attack it and take 1 damage from the Dusk Witch and kill it. So they won't get to benefit from that ability. We'll go ahead and play the Infomancer now because we do have an action to give to it. This Cutthroat Research lets us steal 2 if our opponent has 8 or more amber. They only have 7 though, so it's not going to be useful this turn anyway other than that 1 amber generation. But we're not going to do that. Instead, we are playing the Infomancer and giving it this grafted action. We're already running out of room. We're going to play another Hapsis and a Daughter. And this is a level or a 2-power creature with elusive, and it lets us draw up to 7 each turn, which is powerful, having a consistent extra card in hand. We'll make a little bit more room and put that here. That will end our turn, so we're ready, everybody, and then draw up to 7. But none of that stole any of our amber, so even though the Mutant Sentei of the Egg doesn't have any cards in play, they do have 1 key. 2 more, and they win. Oh, I forgot to draw up to 6. So we're going to call Dis here, and then first thing I'm going to do is you can, instead of playing a card of the house you chose, you can discard cards of the house you chose. And we're going to discard this Soul Snatcher artifact. It says whenever a creature is destroyed, its owner gains an amber. Well, we don't have any creatures to benefit from that, and our opponent has a lot. So we don't want to start giving them amber, so we're just going to have this discarded. We're not going to play that. We could hold on to it, but I'd rather free up a slot in my hand for the end of the turn when I redraw. We will play an Amber Imp, so 2-power elusive, and after a creature reaps, stun it. So if our opponent tries to reap with all their creatures, they'll get a punish bit for that. Stun means they have to spend a turn activating a creature just to remove its stun. I'm going to play Pain Reaction in action, so first thing, get 1 amber. And then it says deal 2 damage to an enemy creature. If it's destroyed, deal 2 damage to each of its neighbors. And I'm not sure, either I want to hit the Daughter, that will kill her, and then deal 2 damage to Hapsis as well, or deal 2 damage to this Technician, which will kill it. Then it'll pop off that ward and put 2 damage on the Infomancer. I could kill this Reassembling Automaton, but it would just reassemble. It would put 2 more damage on these guys, but I don't really care too much about that. So because of the follow-up play I have, I'm actually going to get rid of the Daughter. That also will take them off of 1 extra card per turn, which is nice. Put 2 damage onto this Hapsis. And in case it wasn't clear yet, you don't do anything on your opponent's turn in Keyforge, unless you have some kind of triggered ability. But even then, I don't think any of them give you decisions to make. So everything is on your own turn. So that's the Pain Reaction, and then we're going to play a Misery Exploit, which gives us an amber for each of our enemy's damaged creatures, which is going to be 5. And that puts us right back up to 7 for another check, even though we still don't have much in play. Chancellor hasn't gained any amber yet. They also don't have any Logos cards in hand. So they basically can choose to use 5 Logos creatures or actually play new stuff. This could potentially give them a Logos card. I think they need to get more stuff into play. I do think we want to get rid of the Amber Imp. So I'm going to have Odoak the Patrician attack, which will be canceled via elusive. Then I'm going to use the Golden Spiral to exalt a friendly creature and ready and use it. So even though we didn't choose Logos, this is going to let us use this friendly creature. So we do have to exalt it, which is actually, sounds good, but it's actually kind of a cost a lot of the time. It means we're going to add an amber to it, which means if this dies, our opponent gets that amber. But we do get to use it right away, so we're going to use it to attack the Amber Imp, which means they exchange 2 damage. And since Hapsis beat a creature, it becomes warded, and we get to draw a card. So we got 3 different types of counters on there now. Then let's play some creatures. So I'm going to play this Brutodon Auxiliary. It has Taunt, which means its neighbors can't be attacked. And we can use that to protect our Infomancer and put that over here. It also has Hazardous 2. So when it's attacked, before the damage happens, the attacker takes 2 damage. So we get that out. And we get a couple more Saurians here. We'll play Falaphosaurus. And it has 4 power and a reap ability to look at the top 3 cards of our deck, archive 1, add 1 to our hand, and discard 1. Archive means you put the card here, and at the start of your turn, you have the option of taking all of the cards in your archive into your hand. You can't choose just some of them. So if you have a big archive, it can clog up your hand, but archiving cards can make for some pretty big turns We'll protect that with Taunt as well. And just to mix things up, I'll put this Untitled Chapter on the other side of the board. And this has Elusive again, and Reap. We can choose to exalt it and gain an extra amber. So put that over here, and then we'll ready everything, which actually makes some room. At some point, we might have to make a second row. And with 5 cards in hand and no daughter, we only get to draw 1. And again, the mutant Sentei of the egg has no cards in play, but gets to forge a key. 1 more key, and that's the end of the game, regardless of how many creatures the Chancellor has. So here we're going to play Untamed again. We'll start out with Bumblebird. It has alpha, which means we can't play it unless it's the first card we play. And when we play it, we put 2 +1 power counters on each other friendly untamed creature. So basically, it doesn't do anything. And it's only a level 1, or power 1. So not very exciting, but it's worth mentioning that any creature in Keyforge can be valuable, because at the very least, it can be used to reap. So I guess it doesn't matter, because now we're playing Piranha Monkeys. And it says play or reap, deal 2 damage to each other creature. So actually killing our Bumblebird right off the bat, but that's fine. The only other option was to hold on to it or discard it. So same effect in the end. I wasn't going to hold that card. So we're going to deal 2 damage to each other creature. Quester Jarda. The Hapsis just loses its ward. The Automaton is going to be destroyed. Odoac goes up to 3. This Hapsis also loses its ward. This Technician is going to be destroyed. 2 damage to the Infomancer, to the Auxiliary, and the Flamethrower. And the Automaton just comes back out with no damage due to its destroyed ability. It does get exhausted though. And that's the Piranha Monkeys. And then finally we'll play Teliga. She has 3 power, and each time our opponent plays a creature, we get an amber. So see how many creatures they want to play, although they already have a lot, and they could just kill her first anyway. So let's see if we can get our 3rd key going at some point. So I think we're going to choose Saurian again. We have 4 Brobnar cards, but none of them are very useful. We only have 1 Saurian card, but we have some Saurian stuff to do. Let's start by using the Flamethrower. Look at the top 3 cards of our deck. We'll draw this one, archive this one, and discard this one, just to deny our opponent of their creatures and to avoid them getting extra amber from Teliga. We'll attack with Brutodon Auxiliary against her, so it'll take 3 and she will die. Then I'm going to use the Golden Spiral. Actually, hold off on the Golden Spiral. We're going to play Imperial Scudam. This is an upgrade card, so our first upgrade, this card is going to be attached. So again, first thing is we'll get 1 amber, which is a nice little token for the Chancellor to have. I don't think they've seen these yet. It's going to give the creature 2 armor, and when it's destroyed, all the amber on the creature is going to move to the common supply instead of to the opponent. So that's nice because we're going to put that on Hapsis, which already has an amber on it. And again, if it were destroyed, that amber would go to the opponent. With the Scudam, it'll instead go to the supply, so nobody gets it. And we're going to put that here, and then we'll use the Golden Spiral to exalt and use a friendly creature. So again, it's getting another amber on it, and it's going to attack. 2 armor means it's not going to take any damage from the Piranha Monkeys. So I don't know if we've seen a creature with armor yet, because we've only been looking at cards that have no armor. But if there happen to be a number in the shield here, that is how much less damage it takes on a per turn basis. So with 2 armor from the Scudam, Hapsis will take 0, kill that. That will trigger its ability. It gets a ward, and we get to draw another card. Not Saurian. That is a lot of Brobnar cards. Now we can freely play another creature. When we play it, we can capture 1 this time. And we'll just put it over on this side. These can both reap, and when the Quester Jarta does so, we can also exalt him for an extra amber. So we're going to get 1, 2, 3, but we have to put 1 onto him. And that is our whole turn, and we can't draw any cards because our hand is full. We're pretty far behind on board still, but 2 keys up. Let's see if we can maintain it. Although we don't have any big amber generation this turn. This will definitely help. We're going to play Mars Needs Amber. That'll give us 1 right off the bat. And it says each damaged enemy non-Mars creature captures 1 from their own side. Now they only have 4 to capture from their own side, but we can decide where to put that 4. Definitely don't want to add any more to this guy. Don't want to put it on this guy either. But they've got several creatures that are close to dying. Probably the Questor Jarda does make sense. Although sometimes there are Saurian cards especially that can power up a card for how much amber is on it or reward you for having amber on it. For example, the Scudam lets you cancel all the amber that's been put on this particular creature, so spreading it out makes sense as well. So let's do that for Mars Needs Amber. And then we'll play the Zizixix Shockworm, which another effect that's going to say after an enemy creature reaps, stun it. So punish them for reaping unless they kill this first, which is what they've been doing. But this one actually does have armor, so we'll prevent the first damage it takes. And the Mind Warper, 2-power Mars creature with elusive that has an action to choose an enemy creature and have it capture an amber from its own side. So if we can use the Mind Warper, which it probably will die, but if we're able to use it, we have this battle strategy of denying them their own amber by putting it onto their own creatures. And then hopefully we can kill those creatures and claim that amber. And this is awkward because now their hand is 5 Brobnar cards and a Logos card, which is actually not good. It's just a 4-power creature with no ability relevant right now. You can grab this from their archive, which should actually be face down. So the question is, do we do Brobnar just to empty our hand? It would do, maybe get more stuff in play, but not that great. Or we can just use the houses we have out already. That might make sense rather than overcommitting to an already full board. I'm not a Keyforge expert. I just know I like playing new cards rather than sitting on old ones. We have 4 Logos creatures, or 5 Saurian creatures plus this artifact. But with Logos, we can also grab our archive and pit or play this card to make room. So I guess I'm gonna do Logos. So I'll start out my turn by grabbing my archive. You have to take the whole thing, although there's only 1 card in this case. I'm gonna have the Reassembling Automaton fight. Oh no, the Zizixix Shockworm has an armor, so we need at least 4 power to fight it. I was thinking our Automaton could just come back. So instead I'll use the Automaton to attack the Mind Warper to break the elusive, and then we'll have this Hapsis attack the Mind Warper to kill it. It has 2 armor still from the Scudam, so it doesn't take any damage. Destroys the Mind Warper, and that will trigger this to get a ward, but it already has one. I don't think it can get double warded, but we also get to draw a card, which is yet another Brobnar card. Makes sense. I mean, there's 12 of each house in a deck, so you're going to hit them all eventually. We haven't done a single Brobnar turn so far. Question is, do we give up Hapsis to kill that? And it also gives them an amber. I think I will, so I'm going to attack with Hapsis. 5 damage will kill, break 1 armor, and then kill the 3 left over. And they do get this captured amber. We don't get the trigger ability because it's not around to trigger anymore. It's gone. But then we can play another Hapsis and this Dysania, which says that when we play it, our opponent discards all the cards in their archive and we gain an amber for each one, but they don't have any, so it's just going to be a 4-power creature. That was everything Logos, except for the Infomancer, which we can then reap with for 1 amber. That will trigger its reap ability that lets us use the play effect of the grafted card, but the play effect is to steal 2 amber if our opponent has 8 or more, which they don't. So that will end our turn, and we'll probably have to do Brobnar next. I mean, we just have no cards left that aren't Brobnar in our hand, and we don't get to draw anything else because our hand is full. And this is a huge disappointment for the Sentei player because they had another Mars Needs Amber that they could have made the Chancellor put all their amber on their creatures again, but alas, they only got 1 amber, so it's not even worth it. And they got a 2/2/2 hand, 2 Mars, 2 Untamed, and 2 Dis, which is not the kind of hand you generally want to see, but I think they're okay with it. They're going to play Schuler, choosing Dis. This is a 5-power creature. Play if your opponent has 4 more amber, steal 1, so nothing there. Just going to be a creature opening up a slot in hand. We'll also play Exhume, which means we get 1 amber right away, and we get to bring a creature from a discard pile back. So choose something. You can play it as if it belonged to Dis and was in your hand. And the creature we're going to choose is a Piranha Monkey. We should actually probably play that after Schuler. So let's pretend we're playing that afterward. That way the Piranha Monkey doesn't hit Schuler. Play or reap, deal 2 damage to each other creature. So 2 damage to the automaton, 2 damage to Quester Jarta will kill it, and we get to claim that captured amber. So get rid of him. 2 damage to Hapsis will just pop the ward, unfortunately. 2 damage here will kill it. Clear that out. 2 damage to the Infomancer will kill it, and we get to claim that captured amber. I'm actually not sure about the graft rules. Is this card considered discarded at the same time? Let's say yes, so we'll discard both of those. 2 damage to the auxiliary will kill it, and we get to claim that captured amber. 2 damage to the Philosophosaurus will kill it. We get to claim that captured amber, making plenty of room. Our opponent should be pleased. And then 2 damage here, here, and here. So that's a pretty good Piranha Monkey, I think. Gave us 4 amber plus the 1 from the Exhume, means we are now back in check. Go ahead and play the Schuler for good measure and end the turn. And now the only thing that matters for the Chancellor is denying that 3rd key, because if they can't get rid of 2 of that amber, the game's over. So the question is, do they have any cards that can get rid of 2 amber? And they do not. So we'll take a look at a few Brobnar cards, but this is maybe the worst part about Keyforge, in my opinion, which is that when you just can't do anything, you don't get to play your last turn, or you can, but it's for no reason. So a lot of times you'll see people, or I like to play my last turn acting like I might be doing something to interrupt my opponent, and then just do the big reveal at the end. Haha, I was just having fun. I can't actually stop you. You win. But you really just want to play that last turn, don't you? I won't make you sit through it, but in case you wanted to see some Brobnar cards, we'll just look at our 6 Brobnar cards in hand for the Chancellor. Mog Hunter deals 2 damage to a flank creature after it fights. Bellowing Patrazate has 7 attack, and while it's ready, creatures take 1 damage when they enter play. Gravel Gut has 5 power, and after he defeats an enemy creature, he gets 2 more power. Flamethrower is an artifact. You can use an action to deal damage to a creature and the adjacent creatures. I think that's what Splash 1 is, or maybe it's just one of the adjacent creatures, not sure. Fire Breath is an attachment that gives +3 power and gains before fight. Deal 2 damage to each neighbor of the creature this fights. And finally, Volcano, which they would almost certainly discard that one rather than play it. Deal 4 damage to each creature and gain 2 chains. We didn't talk about chains, but this is a chain tracker, so you would start with just 1 chain, or in this case you get 2 chains, so you'd mark this 2 here, and that's showing you that you get -1 hand size as you redraw at the end of your turn. Every time you suffer from that penalty, you will reduce the number of chains you have by 1. So basically for 2 redraws, you would get -1 hand size, and then your 2 chains would be forgiven. If you had as many as 7 chains, then you would get -2 hand size for 1 turn, and then you would lose 1 chain, go down to 6 chains, and for the next 6 turns, you would have -1 hand size. So that's the idea of how chains work. They can be used in-game as part of card effects. They can also be used out of game if you feel that your or your opponent's deck is more powerful than another, or in certain tournament type situations, chains are used to put handicaps on more powerful decks. So we'll just say that the Chancellor has played their 6 Brobnar cards, grown their board state to a massive degree, and completely decimated the other player's side of the board. But that doesn't change the fact that the Mutant Sentei of the Egg now gets to spend 6 amber, forge a key, and win the game. So as you can see, having a lot of big, powerful, utility, amazing creatures is nothing in the face of amber generation and management. So Mutant Sentei was able to make a lot of amber early. They were also able to deny their opponent's amber, and in fact even use some combos between houses to turn amber into captured amber and turn that into their own amber, which gave them their 3rd key. So unfortunately, the Infomancer deck, the Chancellor of Linzance, did not make the cut. Thanks for watching. Subscribe so we can get more subscribers, and bye.